Hi everyone, it's been a little while since I made a video, so I thought I'd start a new series where I just talked about some games that I'd played in the previous month. This isn't necessarily recommendations or anything, but it's always fun to talk about cool video games, so I hope you enjoy. None of this is particularly scripted, so it's mostly just thoughts off the top of my head. Lately, I've really been missing real-time strategy games, and after installing a few from my Steam library, I eventually stuck to Dawn of War and its expansions. Now, I'd previously played a lot of Dawn of War 1 as a young teen in internet cafes, but I'd never really played the expansions. I really enjoyed Winter Assault playing as the Imperial Guard, but not so much the Eldar. So I stopped that playthrough partway through and eventually settled on Dark Crusade, which introduced the Necrons. I really like playing tank classes, or in games that allow me to, playing the class that just doesn't die, and Necrons really embody this as they're slow, tough, and can always be reanimated in time. I really love their ability that lets them just stand back up if they're shot down, some of the time. I also just really like the resource system at play in Dawn of War. It forgoes the typical system of workers gathering resources from somewhere near your base, and puts those resources out into the middle of the playfield. These resources can be owned by any player, but you have to send a combat unit out to actually capture the point. This creates a really interesting back and forth and constantly keeps the game interesting. It's a really fun system that I'd like to see done more in RTS games, though I understand not many RTS games are even being made these days. At least Dawn of War 2 and Company of Heroes followed this idea. I'm really excited to play more Dawn of War. I've mostly been sticking to skirmish maps, and I've got the Soulstorm expansion ready to go with the Sisters of Battle, who I just think are a really cool faction. I don't play much tabletop Warhammer, even though I have some of the models, so this is a nice way to still engage with the game and not have to worry about transporting my models all over the place and risking breaking them. Another game I've been playing is called Tiny Folks. Now, I haven't played enough of this to really give my full impressions of it, but so far I quite like it. It's a little bit like Darkest Dungeon, but a lot more casual and a little bit more of a roguelike. You have 45 days to win, to beat the final boss, and to do so you must train people up to different classes, send them out to battle, get loot, upgrade your town, upgrade your units more, rinse and repeat. Now, it's pretty simple, but there's a lot of interesting decisions to be made, and it's quite strategic. All of your units seem to have really interesting upgrade paths where warriors can turn into priests that can turn into berserkers and so on and so forth. It's just a lot of fun tinkering around with the class system and seeing what's in the game. I'm not sure how much fun the game will be after I've discovered everything, because discovery I feel is a big part of this one. So far all of the abilities are fairly interesting, and I just like seeing what's next. I don't know what else to say. It's a charming little game for less than the price of a coffee that I think is worth picking up if you're remotely curious. Also, the soundtrack, I'm not sure if I mentioned before, but the soundtrack is so good. I'll probably edit it into the video if I can, so if you hear a music change around here, let me know what you think. I've been playing a lot of Diablo 2 Resurrected on the PS5. I do feel a little bit grimy buying a Blizzard game, but I know a lot of good people still worked on the project and it is what it is. It's a bad situation, but I just want to focus on the games that I love, and this is one that's very special from my childhood. And look, in my personal life I've been trying very hard to focus on the positives and not the negatives in life, and Diablo 2 is a very big positive. It's still a remarkable game. I was inspired to go back and play this after playing quite a bit of Diablo Immortal on my mobile phone. Now that's a whole other can of worms that I won't go into here, but I will say the game itself is very good. It's just let down by a lot of other things, and I don't feel like it's worth my time. But Diablo 2 is just as good, if not better, than I remembered, and it's a much better use of my time and money. It's amazing to see just how far we've come in terms of action RPGs, but also just how much has stayed the same. I really appreciate the slow-paced nature of Diablo 2. It doesn't start you off with a lot of abilities and you really have to work for them, making each upgrade feel meaningful. Similarly, the loot isn't over the top. Every new piece of gear feels meaningful, and it's something that I didn't realize that I missed. Compared to Diablo 3 and Diablo Immortal just showering you with loot, Diablo 2's loot system is a lot more restrained, and I do think that's better personally. Finding it a really good podcast game, I'll just chuck on one of my favorites to listen to and grind through a few levels. I am playing on permadeath mode and that makes it a little bit slower, but it's nice to just take my time with something, going slowly and being very deliberate with what I do. In terms of presentations, I'm honestly blown away. They've done such a good job at remastering these graphics and keeping the same vibe, like everything looks like it should, and I'm shocked when I go back to the old graphics because in my head the new graphics are what I remember the old game looking like. Just artistically, it is fantastic. I've retained the gameplay and the gameplay still feels really good. I'm playing an Amazon, which I haven't done before, and it's a different playstyle as I'm used to the Necromancer and the Assassin. So something new, something old, a good time all around. Fourth, I've been really excited about Monster Hunter Rise. With the addition of the Sunbreak DLC, with all the new weapon skills and new monsters, I haven't been able to get enough of this game. I've been playing since the first PSP game, which I actually got when I visited Japan, so Monster Hunter's always been pretty special to me. Since it's been so long since I played Monster Hunter Rise, I'm a little rusty with the game and I've forgotten a lot. So with the addition of the new weapon abilities and the new area, I'm just a little lost. The weapon I'm most comfortable with is the hunting horn, though that changed a lot in Monster Hunter Rise, so I'm still looking for a new main. I played a lot of Sword and Shield, which I like, especially because it has a lot of access to blunt damage which can KO monsters, but I much prefer the slower playstyle of something like a gun lance or a greatsword. Hammer was also a lot of fun, but I have to say, even after 60 or 70 hours of gameplay, I still don't feel like I have a main weapon yet. I really do miss the old hunting horn. So I'm really not that far into Sunbreak. I haven't fought any of the new monsters yet. I've just been having a lot of fun trying each weapon and really thinking about what I want to make my actual main weapon. I think this week I'm going to put a lot of time into greatsword and switch axe and see which one I prefer before making any more decisions. So far it's just a lot more Monster Hunter, and I love Monster Hunter, so that's just fine by me. So this month, when I've been in the mood for something more story based, I've been going back to Horizon Forbidden West again on the PS5, and I've got to say this is probably the prettiest game I've ever played. The water effects especially are just blowing my mind, and a lot of the scenery is just gorgeous. Now, I don't typically play these big AAA open world games, but Horizon Forbidden West is one of the special ones that I'm really enjoying, and I think it mostly comes down to Aloy as a character and the general story being a really unique setting that I'm just enjoying a lot. These open world games often feel just too big, too broad, and not particularly interesting to me. But as soon as I started playing Forbidden West, I was reminded just how much I love Aloy. She just feels like such a real person, a really strong, amazing lead. I think the moment-to-moment gameplay is pretty interesting. Each of the monsters you fight, they all act a little bit differently. Not only are there different weak points, but you have to know the enemy to know how to get to these weak points. For example, I particularly hate leap lashes because their weak points are right behind their armored legs, and I just can never seem to get to them before they get to me. And while the world itself is very interesting to explore just on a graphical level, and the quests are pretty interesting too, nothing feels like filler, I do tend to get a little bit bored by about half an hour. I think it is a tad bit repetitive, so it's a game I've been playing in short bursts. I adore the story, but the moments between the stories sometimes feel a little bit too long for me. And to be clear, I don't think that's a problem with the game. I think it's more a problem for me, who doesn't typically enjoy open world games for this reason. Regardless, Forbidden West is just a technical marvel. It's a fantastic game that I would recommend to anyone that is interested in the world. And just seeing this beautiful scenery rendered at 60 frames per second on the PS5, I really think it's an essential title if you own one of these consoles. Finally, I've been playing a lot of The Last Spell. This one's been on my wishlist for quite a while, ever since I got really into They Are Billions. I really enjoy tower defense games and colony simulators, and this game's a good mix of both, with a little bit of XCOM tacked in. Essentially, it's a turn-based wave defense game where you train up units, build your city, and defend from hordes of zombies. There's a heavy emphasis on unlocking abilities and buildings, so you're likely going to lose again until you have enough currency for the meta progression to kick in, and I'm not a big fan of that, but the upgrades you get are genuinely very cool. There's a lot of creative spells and abilities to use, and I just love unlocking turrets that can automatically defend the city from attacks while your troops are elsewhere. It's still in access, so perhaps some of the progression will be tightened up in time, And maybe I'm just really bad at the game, but so far it's been quite a time sink. I wouldn't say it's as good as They Are Billions, but it's definitely scratching a similar itch. I think the graphics are really nice, and the music by The Algorithm is just fantastic. It's got a really interesting electronic djent style that I just adore. Despite there being many other tower defense style games to choose from, I think The Last Spell does some pretty unique things, and it's worth picking up if any of what I said sounds interesting. Even though it's an early access title, it feels rather complete, with a lot to do. So far I've sunk about 10 hours into it, and there's a lot that I have not seen. I really enjoy playing this one while I watch YouTube videos or Netflix because it is turn-based. It's a really good time. So that's what I've been playing. I'd love to know if any of these games sounded interesting to you, and I'd love to hear what you're playing this month too. Bye!